Greetings, Watford fans. Omar Moore here, and here we are. Cisco's Disco is over at Vicarage Road. The news today that Watford FC have bid adieu to Xisco Munoz as the head coach of the first team of the Watford Football Club men. Now, this is a decision that the board had to make, and I have no complaints about it at all. The bottom line here is that if you don't have the mentality on the pitch to win football matches, you're not going to get the results. And the bottom line is that if the results aren't there, if the performances aren't there, the players are not going to be the ones that the owner gets rid of. It's going to be the head coach. And I don't think that there's really anything that needs to be said beyond that, really. Xisco Munoz is a decent person, is a good person. I like him very much, respect him a great deal. I think he's a really good individual. Um, Came into Vicarage Road last December. Boxing Day was his first match, and everybody loved him. He was someone who really brought a bit of energy and life to the place. After Ivic, Ivic was awful. It was just like watching paint dry. And you saw Xisco come in. It's as if he opened a window, and let some air into the club, because the club, the football team specifically, let me just get that absolutely right. The football team was stale. It was going through the motions. Even when it was winning these games, they weren't enjoying the football. They weren't enjoying their football. I think that's very, very clear and very apparent to me. That's very clear. But as far as I'm concerned, Xisco did his job in the championship, did it well, but the Premier League is a different animal. And I think Xisco was still trying to work that out in and of himself and in himself. But that's not the real reason, I think, why Xisco was sacked. I think there's so many other things. I'm going to distill them down in just a few short minutes here. One of the things is that I think the camaraderie in that clubhouse with Xisco had probably broken down somewhere. Now, I don't have this information. I'm speculating, obviously, with this because I'm not in the clubhouse. I'm not in the dressing room. None of us are. But I do think that people like Adam Leventhal will have a story on this. I'm sure if he hasn't already for The Athletic, I'm sure that he will. But he'll get to the bottom of all of that. I'm sure that that will come out in time. I do think something happened in that clubhouse, because I don't understand how you go from performing so well in one half of a game to completely falling down in the second half of that match. I don't know how that happens. I can say that about the Newcastle match. I can say that about the Wolves match. I can say that about the game. Really, if you really want to look at this, let's look at the game yesterday. They didn't turn up at all. I've talked about that on this channel here, and you can go to the other video in this channel where I've talked more extensively about the Leeds versus Watford match. But this was about mentality. It was about continuity. It was about cohesion. It was about the fact that this team did not have an identity on the pitch. And I have said time and time again throughout the last few weeks and months, even before the season began, that it would take about between 8 and 10 games into the Premier League season before we really get to know what we're dealing with here, what kind of team this is. Now, we know that this team can perform. They've shown you that they can. Did it against Norwich. Did it against Tottenham, as a matter of fact. Did it against Aston Villa. But even in those games, there were moments where Watford sat back, sat off, were not disciplined enough. Case in point, conceding a late goal against Aston Villa. That was completely needless. No reason why that happened. Poor game management against Tottenham. Goalkeeper wasn't on it. Wasn't on. Should have had that ball, right? And in other games, goalkeeper, you know, making a mistake against Norwich, making a mistake against Newcastle, should have saved both of those, or should have done better with both of those. You know the game, you know the goals I'm talking about. Temo Pukki's goal against us at Carrow Road, and the game at the Vic the following week against Newcastle. The strike from Sean Longstaff should have been dealt with, right? It's things like that that are also issues. It's things like coming into games against teams that have not won a Premier League game prior to facing you, and then ending up with points in each of those games. Now, the Norwich game obviously is an exception to that, but the games I'm thinking about are the game against Wolves, the game against Newcastle, and the game against Leeds. Each of those games going in, Watford were playing against a team that had not yet won a Premier League game. And in each of those games, those three teams either won the game or got a point from us. The Newcastle game. And quite frankly, the Newcastle game, Newcastle should have won. Because even though we improved our play in the second half of that game, as I pointed out before, Newcastle still had chances to win the game. And better finishers would have buried us that day at the Vic. And Jacob Murphy, if that was Cristiano Ronaldo, if that was Romelu Lukaku, you know, if that was Mohamed Salah, we would be talking about a defeat to Newcastle. That would have been 4 defeats in 5 games. And when we had lost the 3 games in a row that we lost, Brighton, right? We lost that game. Lost the game against Norwich. We lost the game prior to after Brighton was against Tottenham. Brighton, Tottenham, and Wolves. Those were 3 games in a row we lost. I think back then Gino was probably making phone calls. I think Gino was making decisions with the board then about Xisco. And again, there's information that we don't have. There's information that I don't have, obviously, that none of us as Watford fans have about what the board knows and about what's going on in that clubhouse. We don't have that information. The board does. The players do. The head coach did. Xisco did as a head coach. They all know what's going on in there. And when you explicitly call for a better mentality in these games that Xisco had the previous couple of weeks, in particular, and then the players don't do that, they don't show it. They have a poor first half against Newcastle. They have a poor, heck, they didn't even show up. They didn't even turn up yesterday against Leeds. That says to me that the players have stopped playing for you. That says to me that something's going on in that clubhouse. Something's going on in that dressing room. And that says to me that you've got players who can perform, and they don't have to be together for 10 weeks. Mentality does not require you to gel, right? You don't have to gel into a mentality. A mentality is either there or it is not there. And the person chiefly responsible for putting that mentality together and instilling players with a mentality and a belief is the head coach, is the manager. And when that has not happened, we can say whatever we choose about the talent on this team. We can say whatever we like about the team selections, about the subs, about the starting lineup, about who's playing, about who's not. If the manager has not managed at all to get these players to have that mentality on the pitch, and of course the players are responsible for that too, but if the manager is not getting that from his players, Gino and the board are not going to get rid of the players. Gino and the board are going to get rid of the manager. It's that simple. And nice guys don't finish last, in my view. It's that nice guys, well, I was going to say some analogy, that the analogy doesn't work. So I'm gonna I'm gonna get rid of that comment. But being decent does not get you the results. Being decent, I'll put it this way, does not win you ball games, does not win your matches, right? Being a nice person does not pay your mortgage, right? You can be decent, you can be nice, but being that alone does not pay the rent, does not pay your mortgage. It just doesn't, right? So you can be decent, you can be nice, you can be whatever it is as a really decent person who is not antisocial, who is decent, who is kind. Those are all really good qualities that hopefully all of us have. But when you are in the hot seat in any job, particularly this job at Vicarage Road, you have to get a tune out your players. You have to. And as I said in the video yesterday, Watford players, at least as they had played so far under Xisco, they had a 5-minute mentality, if at all, 5 minutes, where they would do something really electrifying in some of these games. And by then the game was gone, or the game was either in the balance. And you saw it yesterday against Leeds. That game was in the balance, even in the 80th minute. And Watford did not do enough. They didn't. And so Xisco's gone. I think he's a really good person. But again, this is how this business is. And our owner, the owner, Gino, Watford's owner, Gino Pozzo, um, I do like and respect him because he makes the decisions and he doesn't mess around. And every manager coming in here knows that that is what they're getting into. And why not? We are looking for success. We want to succeed. We want this team to do well. But I think the last straw was Leeds. But I think this was coming from the game that they lost against Tottenham, quite frankly. The Brighton game and the Tottenham game. And I know people would go, well, why the Tottenham game? I just think that they have absolutely done themselves no favors here. And I think the game against Wolves, actually, let me just rephrase that. The game against Wolves, the third of those losses in a row, when Wolves were not all that good and still won 2-0, that was really it. I think that's when Gino and the board decided, okay, he's out. We'll give him Norwich and we'll give him Newcastle and we'll give him Leeds. And then international breaks come in, he's gone. No matter what happens, we're going to take the chance. We have fired him after Wolves. We've sacked him after the Wolves game. Let's give him these final 3 games to see where he puts us, and then we're going to make the change. That is what I think the board did. Now, listen, I'm not in the board, right? That is what I think happened. I think the board made that decision that after that Wolves game where they just capitulated in that second half, they were awful. They gave it a decent go in the first half of that game at the Vic against Wolves on September 11th. And then the second half, they were non-existent. I think it was that game where Gino and the board said, right, we made a decision. Let's make a decision. Right, he's gone. We'll give him these 3 games. Norwich is next, right? And then we've got Newcastle next after that. And then we got Leeds. Those are 3 games where we think we can get points, where we could probably win all 3 of those games, at least get 6 points out of a possible 9. Then after that, we've got an international break and Liverpool's next. So we're going to make the change. I totally think this is how it happened. Now we'll see. But the board has a lot more information than I do, than you do. And we'll find out more, I'm sure, as the days and weeks go. I think during this international break, we will learn a lot more about what led to this departure. Obviously, poor results, poor performances, non-performances. And now the news is that Xisco is going to be succeeded by Claudio Ranieri in all likelihood. Now, the Pozzos and Ranieri have a good long relationship. They've known each other for a long time. That makes this new acquisition or this new head coach is likely to happen. So I'd be shocked if it doesn't now. All the reports are pointing at it. And it makes sense in a way. As I said, they have a very good relationship. I think all this talk about age is absolute rubbish. It's nonsense. I absolutely would strike that down. I mean, a manager being 70 or 80 or 50 or 4, come on now, that's absolute rubbish. The age has got absolutely nothing to do with this. Um, you're still learning when you're, listen, we never stop learning, right? So that's another thing. I'll knock that down right now. We never stop learning no matter what our age is, first of all. Second of all, we've seen countless times how managers of a certain vintage, if you will, have performed very well and have had excellent relationships with players. And even if they've not performed very well, the relationships with players have been very good. I mean, we can look at people like Roy Hodgson, we can look at Sir Alex Ferguson. I think that's a really good example. And others who, it doesn't matter what the age is, really. It's, can you get your tactics across? Can you get the team identity in place? And the wrap up here for me are two things. One, I think Xisco suffered because he was too much one of the boys. I think if you look back when he came in, he was, as I said earlier, like a breath of fresh air, open up a window, let some air into the place. And he was so chummy. Everybody, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think it can be an issue. It can be a problem. You can't have a manager that is so wedded to the players that the players look at him as one of them. And then that really becomes a problem when they're not winning games, because then players then don't perform to the level. And I think the players lose respect for someone like that. Sad but true. That is something about human nature that happens. And I don't know, again, I don't have all the facts. I don't know what went on. I don't know what's going on. And I don't know what the board knows, but the board, I can assure you, knows more than we do, certainly knows more than I do. So, I think that's one of the things that hurt Xisco in the end. Ironically, he was taken, he took to the championship like a duck to water. And, the players loved him. He was a great man manager in that way. But then Premier League, you get rid of a lot of players, you get a lot of players come in, it's a different environment, and all the buddy stuff, that dissipated, didn't it? You know, it dissipated. Not the same dynamic. You know, a lot of these players that you have now were not on that championship side last season. Maybe 5 of them were, but the rest were not. And so I think that is an issue. Xisco being one of the boys, I think you can't, you have to have a bit of distance and separation. And I think that may have been part of the reason he's also gone now, because the players, I think they didn't, quite frankly, I think the players just did not play for him. I think yesterday, particularly, the players didn't play for Xisco yesterday. That's my read. That's my view, one opinion. Um, I would love to hear what you, as fellow Watford fans, think about that, or anything else. I really do think that is a major reason, one of the reasons, not major. That is a reason, key reason. And then the other thing is the tactics weren't there. The identity wasn't there. The team didn't have any identity. They didn't have any real purpose. And yesterday you saw individuals on the pitch. You can't have it so that only 2 players are committed to the cause. That's not good enough. And then what struck me also is that the comments that Ben Foster made, ever the honest one, and I love that. I think it's good to be like that, and we need more people like that everywhere, not just in sports. But that's what struck me. What struck me about the comments of Ben Foster, he just said it right out. We didn't have the mentality, we just didn't do it. I mean, there you go. There you go. The question is, why didn't we do it? Why didn't we have the mentality? Why didn't the players have the mentality? Why? That's really what I would like to know. And then the board looks at that and goes, well, it's not, we can't get rid of these players. We invested in these players. We can't get rid of them. I'm not going to get rid of 11 players, 12 players, 24 players. We're going to get rid of one head coach. And that's what happened. I do wish, by the way, Xisco all the very best going forward. And again, to him and his family, I wish them all the very best, and hope that you land on your feet at another job soon, which I think you will. Um, you can take time now, obviously, to spend more time with your family. I know that's something that's you've talked about very publicly about that and how difficult that is. And yeah, it's completely understandable. My goodness me, family is everything. You know, family means so much, and so I totally empathize with Cisco on that. So he'll have some more time to do that now. And when Claudio Ranieri comes in, which is is inevitable now, we'll see what happens. I think he'll certainly get a tune out of these players. You can't tell me that all of these players are gonna lay low for someone like Claudio Ranieri. I know that he got Sampdoria into good shape. He did not have a good time at Fulham. I think that dynamic did not work, and Ranieri was let go. And you can be best assured that despite the good relationship that the Pozzos and Ranieri have, if indeed Ranieri becomes the head coach and that gets confirmed, which I expect that it will in very short order, if the results aren't coming, you don't think the Pozzos are gonna you think the Pozzos are gonna stick with Ranieri? I don't think so. So, I think that Ranieri probably will come into this with an understanding that it's a very short leash. It's a very short leash indeed. And I think these players, with the kind of talent you've got now, they should be performing a lot better. I think that's just a fact. And Xisco was just not in the end the person that was going to be able to do that, and to do it on a consistent basis. It was very clear from those three losses in a row, and then very clear from the Newcastle match, and very clear, obviously, shockingly clear from yesterday's match at Leeds, that Xisco was not the person to keep going with. I don't. I mean, there'll be some fellow Watford fans who will disagree with that, and that's all well and good. Of course, we can agree and we can disagree. I think that's obvious. That doesn't even have to be said. But to me, it's quite clear that you couldn't continue like this. You couldn't. And no, I was not for giving Xisco any more time here, quite frankly. The change had to be made. It had to be made. You have a 2-week international break, 8 games into the season. It's still early. You're sitting, what, 14th or 15th in the table, you know, but it's really, obviously, it's the position that counts, it's the points that count, but it's the performances and the mentality. And that does come down in the end, obviously, to the players, but it really comes down to the manager, who's responsible for instilling a mentality into them. And if they're not putting that out on the pitch, Xisco can call for that a million times a week during the training and publicly. If the players aren't performing for you, they're not performing for whatever reason that is, or reasons, whether it's team selection, people left on the bench, people not playing, whatever it is, personality clashes, whatever it is, you know, you've got to have a mentality to perform on the pitch and do it well. And we just didn't see that from Watford, except for 2 or 3 games out of these first 7. We just didn't really see that. And the board has a decision to make, and I think they've made the right decision here. And it's a brutal business. It's sad to see Xisco go, but look, Watford fans, we deserve better quality football from the people that we're buying the shirts of the backs of. We deserve better quality football. I think we all, I think, believe and know that that's the truth. We deserve better football. And many of us, many of you are spending your hard earned money on season tickets. You're buying shirts, you're buying this, you're buying that. You're traveling away from home. You're traveling up to Elland Road. You're traveling here. You're traveling there. You're spending good money, hard earned money. You deserve better. We deserve better than that. So the sentimentality, yeah, it's sad to see him go. But it's also not a good feeling to be taking a trip up to Elland Road and see what you saw yesterday either. And it's also not a good feeling to be spending your hard-earned money and not seeing anything that befits the kinds of performances a team like this can clearly do, whether they're taking time to gel or not. Like I said before, mentality is not a thing you gel on. You either have it or you don't. You either exhibit that on the pitch or you do not. And at the end, it comes down to the head coach.